How's it going? I'm Bonnie Violet, trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, digital chaplain.
I'm Pacey, trans masc, non-binary, mental health and recovery advocate.
And welcome to Transjoyboise, where every story, laugh, and act of joy is a stand for our community.
We uplift bold voices, share real experiences, and celebrate trans lives thriving.
Tune in, connect, and spread the joy because trans joy is unstoppable. That was fairly smooth.
Yeah, that was really good. That was solid.
Yeah, not too bad. And
Right. That's pretty impressive, though.
Yes, and as you can see, we have a guest here today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I don't have quite the lengthy intro, but
I'm sure you do, but
the short version. Yeah, I'm Kerry Thomas. It's a great opportunity to share this space, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome, great. And so one of the reasons why we were having you on today is that on Friday, the 28th, which also happens to be my birthday, February 28th is also HIV is not a crime awareness day. I was like, correct. It's HINAC. Yes. Yeah, HIV is not a crime awareness day. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I love that opportunity. And again, I appreciate that opportunity to kind of hang out a little bit. And I really enjoy the podcast. And so getting an opportunity to get this out a little bit. This is the third year of HIV is not a crime awareness day. So it was, I work for the Sero Project, and we primarily focus on HIV criminalization, but also the connecting tissues that go along with that. And so about that time, Kamari Lafferty, who's our co-executive director, had this idea of having an awareness day to highlight to bring the issue to the forefront. And so 2 years ago, it was primarily nationally. Now it's worldwide. And it's a great opportunity to get the message out about not just HIV, but an HIV criminalization, to bring awareness of all the people that are impacted by criminalization and HIV in general.
And what are some of the things that happens with HIV is not a crime awareness day? Yeah.
I'm just used to saying that.
I know. I'm like, that's a mouthful. We had the mouthfuls. No.
Yeah, a lot of times people say HINAC, and we have a training academy that's every other year. This year, we're going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina, North Carolina State University for training. But so HIV Crime is Not Awareness Day. The centers on changing the legislation and maybe I'd like to even back up and talk a little bit about the history of criminalization a little bit. Yeah. So there's a handful of states across the country that currently have have laws on their books that criminalize people living with HIV. Meaning that, and it is not for, a lot of times not for transmission. All the statutes focus on just not disclosing your HIV status, and they make that a crime. So with Sero Project, we're really focusing on getting rid of those laws, to modernize those laws. I think what we know more about HIV, first, as far as the human rights issue, is that to single out for prosecution for any illness is inhumane. But specifically with HIV, these laws were created early on in the epidemic, 1988, in fact, and the order was attached to the Ryan Wright funding. So from a national standpoint, it was attached to that. And what I mean by attached to that is that the stipulation that the government made is that we'll give you this funding, but we want you to have a felony statute on your books, which is that.
It was kind of like a public health measure at the time.
Right. And I've been living with HIV since 1988. And so believe it or not, I actually can understand the fear that was going on there, because I had that fear.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so I can kind of understand the rationale by wanting to have something in mind. However, just as life changed, what we know about HIV today has changed. And then so these laws are no longer necessary.
Right. And so the laws are still on the books. They've never changed. But the Ryan White funding has it. Exactly. It doesn't expect the same.
That's what's really interesting.
Support.
Exactly. So from the federal standpoint, they haven't no longer attached the funding to that statute. So states are still getting the Ryan White funding, regardless if they have the statute or not. What hasn't changed, states like Idaho has not repealed that law or even modified it, or even want to take a look at the law to change it to match the medical facts of HIV.
Oh, that's so interesting, because we've made so many just strides in treatment and just prevention that it's such an antiquated
Right.
Yeah.
And
law.
that's what's interesting is that you can have criminal justice, and you can have come from the medical field, but you can't do both.
Mm.
Meaning that if our goal, and Idaho has a goal that they wanted to eliminate HIV, to get to rid the state of HIV by, I think it's 2030, I think it is. That was the goal.
Something like that.
Right.
Oh, wow.
But the best way that we know today is that to get people tested, get folks on medication. That's how you stop the spread of the disease.
Not by criminalizing it.
Well, by criminalizing it, but all the statutes primarily affirmative defense, meaning that you can't be charged if you don't know your status. So on the one hand, the medical society say we got to get as many people tested as possible in order to get on medication. You get on medication, then you can get undetectable.
So you're not spreading the virus.
Correct.
Yeah.
But if people don't know their status, they can't be charged.
Right.
So if anything, it discourages people from getting tested,
Right.
getting on medication, and so forth.
Yeah, it kind of de-incentivizes
Very much so.
someone knowing their status
Right.
and doing what they need to do about
Yeah.
the virus.
And that's a really unfair position to be put in, to have it seem more beneficial to not know your status
Right.
just because you don't want to get, prosecuted with something
Right.
like that. Whereas instead you should be wanting to know so you can be treated for it. That's
Yeah.
so backwards here.
Yeah, and and we've come so far because I've been positive for 26 years, and back in the day, when I was living here, I was scared. Like I remember we were talking about making partners sign letters saying,
Yeah.
I told you that I had HIV, and this was like before PrEP. This was before we knew that like a no viral load, undetectable viral load meant untransmittable. And so there was definitely a lot of fear around, and I think even less of the idea of an incentive. It's like, okay, I was okay, like maybe I'm in a high risk group, maybe I'm gay, maybe I'm whatever. People have told me that I'm going to have HIV because I'm part of this group, right? And then, okay, so I'm fine today. I'm getting dates. I'm doing my job. I'm feeling fine. But if I go and take a test, then all of a sudden I'm diseased, I'm toxic. If I'm HIV positive,
Right.
then I'm having to deal with the health department asking me all these questions. Are the police going to be on me? And then like, am I going to date? Am I going to, all this sort of stuff just kind of comes in. And so like at the end of the day, I think people might not be like super conscious of it, but at the end of the day, they're like, well, why do I want to know?
Yeah, and there's no question that the stigma that associated with HIV, criminalization statutes play right into that. That they're separating people as other than those people, and the statutes make the 100% responsibility of the person who's living with HIV to protect both partners. It's not a mutual thing, and I can get kind of passionate and emotional about it because I was convicted under that statute, and I served 15 years in prison for non-disclosure. And so I think I was trying to do the math, and it'll be a year and a half next month. On the 11th of next month, I've been out a year and a half, and it's been a great opportunity. And we talked about Sero Project. That's when I connected while I was still incarcerated. That's when I connected with Sero Project. I was on their board of directors. And it's really interesting how that, because a lot of things that we're finding across the nation, not just in Idaho, that when these laws are when you're being prosecuted, the media attention goes through the roof. I mean, there's a lot of negative media attention, and it's really powerful and hurtful. And at the time of my arrest, my son was 13 years old, I believe, 12, 13 years old. But both my parents were older folks, and the amount of media attention that was coming forward was just intense.
Yeah.
And so
it was not kind.
Yeah, at all.
It was I mean, we knew each other kind of sort of back then. I was running Alpha, the HIV/AIDS organization, because this would have been like 2008.
2007, 2008.
2008, yeah. And so it was definitely very much like, this is a monster, didn't disclose their status, trying to infect people with HIV, very much a very like negative kind of slant to it all. And I remember you had been volunteering with Alpha for a while. I had met you. I'd met the person you were dating, you know what I mean? Like, and I knew that like you were open about this sort of stuff, but the law doesn't care about that, because basically it's not even about like transmitting the virus to an actual person. So like the person doesn't have to get HIV. The person just has to claim that they weren't told or they weren't aware. And then it becomes like a he said, she said thing.
And even worse than that, it becomes the person who's charged. A lot of times, we go up in civics class, you're innocent until proven guilty. That kind of, that's the foundation of our judicial system. just in in cases like this, but oftentimes, specifically with HIV, you have to prove that you did.
Mhm.
They don't have to prove that you didn't tell.
Right.
You put in a situation to prove that you did disclose,
Right.
and that's pretty difficult.
And that's why we like had people, like why we
Right.
were thinking we needed people to sign
Exactly.
things or whatever. And I think one of the things that's also important to bring about, and I think this is the issue with corrections as a whole that you kind of
Mhm.
talked about, like, yeah, there's issues with like HIV, but in corrections as a whole, like there have been other people in Idaho
Mhm.
who have been found guilty of this or charged with the same charge,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And they were not sentenced
Mhm.
to 30 years in
Sure.
prison like yourself. And I
Sure.
do believe that part of that had to do with the fact that you're a Black man
Mhm.
and she was a white woman.
Mhm.
A lot of those other cases are like men on men,
Yeah.
gay men kind
Right.
of aspects in which the consequences were much little,
Sure.
even though there were a lot of the same process of
You bet.
somebody claiming the other person didn't disclose. And many times the person actually had disclosed.
Correct. And believe it or not, I've how do you manage a 30-year sentence? My sentence was originally 30 years, and I'll take a quick tap my hat to the Idaho Department of Corrections,
Mhm.
because I'll tell you what, at the time that I spent there, they gave me every opportunity to kind of get my life figured out a little bit.
Mhm.
And what am I going to do? I mean, how do you do
Yeah.
30-year sentence? I remember early on, people were asking me, well, how are you going to do 30 years? And I'm like, I can't,
Yeah.
but I can do today, and I can do God willing, do another day and another
Yeah.
to get momentum. And somewhere in that process, I realized, boy, that's the same way that I adjusted to live with HIV.
Mhm.
The same anxieties that I had. How am I going to live? Am I going to be able to have kids, or am I going to see my family?
Yeah.
Am I going to see? I was
Your
24
grandkids.
years old. Am I going to see the age of 30?
Right.
Back in '88, I was told that, and this is what I heard. I always like to phrase it like that, because
Mhm.
I'm what I've learned today. I choose to believe that there's more information given to me than what I heard.
Mhm.
But what I heard was, you've tested positive for HIV,
Mhm.
and then after that, I heard wah 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 wah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 months, wah
Yep.
wah wah wah, maybe a year.
Yep.
And so when I believed him, and I truly believed that, wow, I'm not going to be around to make those decisions.
Mhm.
So oddly enough, when I was incarcerated, it was a period of adjustment. And I didn't believe that my original sentence was 30 years.
You figured you'd probably die in prison.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was real important to me to figure out how I'm going to live that time. And it was really similar. I attacked it in the same way that I tackled it with HIV. Give myself as much information I possibly could.
Mhm.
Set clear goals. Develop strong
It took you a while to get there, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
no doubt. I think that early on, it's interesting when you talked about my connection with Sero Project.
Mhm.
So after I got to the facility, I get a call from some guy named Sean Strube, out of the blue, and he's doing a documentary on HIV criminalization. And believe it or not, at that time, I didn't even realize other states had those statutes.
Yeah.
And with an intense amount of media attention,
Mhm.
my first thought was like, the last thing I want to do is touch that hot stove again.
Mhm.
But Sean, if anyone who knows Sean Strube, he's very convincing, and he's a very strong personality. He's very sincere in what he does.
Mhm.
And he said, well, don't worry about it. I'm coming to Idaho, and we'll sit down and talk about it.
Wow.
And I love to share the story about the power of advocacy. A lot of the things that you folks are doing
Mhm.
is that I remember clearly when they were walking me to the room where I was going to meet with Sean,
Mhm.
and I leaned over to the officer. I was like, look, give me about 15, 20 minutes, half-hour talks with this guy, and tell me you have to take me back.
Mhm.
We got in there, and 8 hours later,
Oh wow.
I decided that I wanted to do something. I wanted to have a voice. I wanted to
Mhm.
do whatever I could where other people will be in the same situation.
Mhm.
And I really broaden what I mean by same situation.
Yeah.
The people who are determined to be victims of the crime,
Mhm.
criminalization directly impacts them.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is society, we're giving out misinformation.
Mhm.
We're not given all the facts to make a informed decision.
Right.
Because you're instantly seen as you're going to be infected. They don't
Right.
tell any of the medical facts. It says something has happened to you, you're a victim.
Yeah.
And I think that, especially in this political environment nowadays, I choose not to see myself as a victim.
Yeah.
In any situation, whether it's living with HIV, whether it's being formerly incarcerated,
Mhm.
whether it's struggling with how to pay my rent, all the things that come with living today is even in this community.
Mhm.
No, we're not victims.
Yeah.
And I think you both can kind of relate to that.
I can relate. I hear in the sense of like, it's important for me, like as a person to
Mhm.
not see myself as a
Very
victim,
much so.
but it is important to recognize that I was a victim, that I was harmed by a system or by a situation that was not my doing.
Yes.
Like, I think that's important, because I think sometimes we'll skip from that, like, I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor, without really doing the work of like, actually, no, I was a victim and this was not okay, but like, that there ain't fuck I can do about it now, except for try to like live beyond it, and not live like stuck in that hurt, damage, and continue living in that victimhood, but finding a way to live beyond it.
And I think and I'm guessing you both would agree, part of that is being a service to others. You know, when I'm looking around, I want to. I remember again thinking I'm going to do 30 years. I mean, I had when you're laying in your bunk in your cell, you know, and it's cold and it's smelly and the noise, all the things that we think about prison. I would challenge that most folks during that time, they have that moment of clarity. It's what you do with it. And for me, it's like, how do I, if I'm not gonna live out here, if I'm gonna die here, what do I want to be said about
legacy,
what's having that sense of purpose that was developed. And again, it wasn't overnight, like you're saying. It took a period of time and frustration and tears and anger, all those things to really look at that. But I made a decision to myself, and then I'm not going out like a sucker.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm going to stand up for me and mine, for my family, then now the broader community. And when I say I don't see myself as a victim, because like, yes, there was circumstances that would lead to do that. And I challenge folks every day in their everyday life. Well, what are you going to do about it? You know, we were talking about the radio show that we were listening to one morning. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
And one of the things that stuck out to me is, do we want to be slapped or do we want to be knocked down? And that really resonated with me in this political environment, because being slapped to me means I'm docile, I'm not being assertive, those type of things. But to be knocked down, at least I'm in the fight.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what HIV is not a crime awareness day means to me. Is I'm standing up to make a stand, but what are we going to do about it? We may not win. We may not get things changed. All that may be true. But at least I can stand up and look myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I live with a purpose, and that purpose has really impacted those around me. And I think that my level, when I have that framework, my level of empathy went through the roof. And I think empathy for me is not about, you know, feeling sorry for someone, those type of things. Empathy to me is feeling with someone. You know, and all of us, I think that's lacking. I don't think that we're a very empathic community nowadays, or a nation right now. But the one-on-one, I challenge people. I love that we're having a coffee and tea. I'm telling you, I strongly believe to my core that anything can be resolved over a cup of coffee. I prefer donuts over a cup of coffee and donuts.
As long as you're like have really open parties that I think are willing to show up on a regular basis, because it's not going to happen in one conversation. It's not going to happen in 2 conversations. It's not going to happen in 8 forced conversations in a short amount of time. Like, it really takes building relationship and being in regular communication and being willing to like assume the best out of one another, which can be so hard when they're the ones who are either represent your perpetrator or your oppressor or you're an authority. It can be really hard to be like, hey, I know you punched me in the face, but like, that's cute.
We talked about before coming on about your appreciation of Malcolm X, and that's so true. Malcolm X is strongly the core that I believe in the context that I'm not going to pacify my oppressor, you know, but I don't have to go to the extreme.
To become an oppressor.
I'm a human being too, and we look at it not just on the HIV issues, but across the board right now, there's so many different communities that are under attack, you know, and simply on not wanting to give people their human dignity. And that's for sure. And I remember a lot of times in the incarceration settings, there's talking about this not dignified, they take your dignity. And I say, no. It's my dignity. I get to be the arbiter of that, what that means to me. And you set that line in the sand. And this is what it means for me to be Kerry Thomas. This is what it means to me to be a grandfather or a father or a friend. You know, those type of things, all those things play out. And that's the conversation I think that I'm optimistic enough that when you have those type of conversations, just one-on-one with folks, that's what things get changed. You know, it's not I'm all for a good rally, but the needle moves when you're having a cup of coffee and you're talking about, I'm a grandfather now, when I'm talking with someone else about their grandkids, that's one question I would have to folks is when we're looking at the criminalization, what do you want for your grandkids?
Right.
What do you want for their kids? Do you want them to live in a society that when we're so close to the potential of ridding HIV altogether, but we have to do the steps to do it, and criminalization is not it.
No. Yeah, and it seems like we're moving backwards as a nation.
It can.
Just from what I've seen in legislation, they're starting to target things like PrEP.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's no coincidence that I think they associate that with the queer community heavily. I think a lot of people do. And I know that we are right in their crosshairs. And I think that so many people are going to suffer because of that discrimination with doing things like getting rid of PrEP. That seems cartoonishly evil to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
which feels like it creates an extra complication, I think, for your work right now.
Right.
Because your work isn't specifically around LGBTQ-ness. I mean, a lot of the times the folks that are harmed even more in these situations are straight folks who get like the larger sentences and things like that. And that's a generalization.
Sure,
I can't imagine how it feels like it would be a challenge to be like, hey, what about us? And like, can we fix this in a time in which you maybe doesn't feel like you're in the target zone right now, but to like put yourself in there, it feels like it almost, there's like I could see it being a challenge of like, is this going to be helpful or is this going to make it actually even worse?
That is so true. I think that, so now I'm on staff with Sero Project since I've been released. And again, we talk about people that have a lot of integrity, that are people of their word. And I remember it was almost said like in passing, so to speak, that, hey, if and when you get out, we got a job for you. Again, I'm looking at 30. I'm like, I'll be 90. I'm good. I don't want to have to work that time. But as soon as it was released, I had an opportunity. They offered me a position. I've been working ever since. And again, quick nod to the Idaho Department of Corrections, because they're really allowing me to really expand my opportunities for a career. And so I think that they have really opened their mind what it means to how we treat people on parole, and they're making those strides. As the work to be done, I think that you could talk to every single person there. They believe that work needs to be done.
When you give, I understand how you give gratitude for them and stuff, but I'm just like, you shouldn't have fucking been there to begin with, And I know there's a difference between corrections and the judicial system, and like all that sort of stuff. And corrections are just kind of, they're the ones who get all the crap.
Yeah, and that's way off track, but you're 100% right on that. I think the way our system across the country, particularly in Idaho, works is that the court system sends you the Department of Corrections, and then the parole commission decides when you leave. The Idaho Department of Corrections stuck in between. And I'm hesitant to say clean up the mess, because I don't think human beings are messes. But they're stuck in the middle with that, and so
with limited resources,
very
limited training.
And I just found out today, matter of fact, that a lot of the education inside the correctional facilities is grant driven. Guess what? They've lost their grant money
through federal federal funding. Because I think that's a concern with HIV access, right? Because I know like in a state like ours, where people don't want to take care of people with HIV. I know we've been very lucky to have like the Ryan White Care Act, which is a federally funded act that can kind of be the payer of last resort when our state or city or ourselves are unable to pay $5,000 a month for a medication.
And I'm not an economist, but I wasn't a big fan of math. I sidestepped math, to get through. I'm like, dang, you gotta have credit for math too. So all that being said is that what we know to be true when it comes to HIV, the sooner you get people on medication, the better it is. And guess what that brings down? That brings down the cost. And so why would we want to stop PrEP? Why would we want to limit funding to get folks on medication? Which again, like we said in the beginning, the key to getting medication is to get tested. Any HIV statute limits that opportunity to be tested.
Yeah, which is why I think, I think we can look at, like, I don't think anyone should be behind bars. I know that's a whole other conversation.
Sure.
But like, I think if we look at like our society and like, we know how to prevent HIV.
Sure.
We know how to take care of people. We know how to have great lives as people living with HIV.
Mhm.
And yet we're still dealing with people dying
Sure.
because of their HIV status, not
Yeah.
accessing care,
Correct.
not finding out, and then we have like, it's like, so we obviously know better, and knowing better and having knowledge is not enough.
Right.
Like
100% right.
it's like a sickness of
Mhm.
us as a people.
Mhm.
And we have to figure
follow
out
you.
how, as a people, we can better care for one another. Otherwise, we're just going to have more people with HIV, or we're going to have
Sure.
new diseases
Mhm.
that are going to be in the same folks that
You bet.
us as a society or a government or
Mhm.
whatever see as people who don't matter,
Sure.
continuing to have these problems. So even if we cure HIV tomorrow,
Mhm.
because of the way our society is, we're still going to
bet.
have, we're still going to be coming at people, whether we're throwing them in prison for this, that, or the
Right.
other, or
Yeah.
there's some new disease that they're getting impacted by, like diabetes or so
Right.
many other,
Yeah.
like, you can see over and over these health disparities,
Right.
and they're caused from like society.
Right. And the logical question for me is, what do we do?
Yeah.
I think that
We're figuring that out
even,
today,
even,
right?
And even while incarcerated, when you can talk about all the conditions, all the rhetoric we hear, that say it's 100% true.
Mhm.
The next question for me was, and to this day is, well, what do you want to do about it?
Mhm.
As far as HIV is not
What
a
can we
crime
do?
awareness day, yeah, we got to start having the conversations. It's not necessarily about the big ticket items. They have a conversation.
Yeah.
So believe it or not, there's more people that are living with HIV. Your neighbor, maybe your bus driver. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus. Your checker at the grocery store. Chances are, if you look at the numbers, there's probably someone in that group that's living with HIV.
Yep.
How do we treat people? How do you want to be treated?
Right.
And does that change when you know
exactly
something about them?
exactly?
Because I think that's the thing.
That's
It's
the
like,
fear,
it's like, I'm going to treat you like you're a teller because you're the teller or whatever.
Correct.
But when I know you have HIV,
right?
am I going to be different?
Exactly, and getting information, education out there, and that's part of what HIV is not a crime awareness day, especially at our time at the Capitol on Friday, is that we want to break bread. We're going to serve some lasagna and just have a conversation, and anyone wants to come by, swing by. We'll be there from 10 to 2. Swing on by. I'll feed you some lasagna, and I think we're going to have some kind of sodas or something like that with it, and just have get the facts.
Yeah.
I mean, too often right now, I think that I'm really careful of not just taking the impression of the first thing I hear or the last news article, or I just show how old I am when I say news article. We're the paper.
What's a paper?
Exactly. Don't take
Like
don't credit for that. Go find out your own information.
Mhm.
And HIV is not a crime awareness day. It's not an opportunity for folks to do that.
Mhm.
But one thing that I really realized when I started getting into the advocacy work is how broad it is.
Yeah.
It's not simply about HIV.
Mhm.
It's about trans rights.
Yeah.
It's about the LGBTQ community in general.
Mhm.
It's about the elderly. It's about people. There's a Center for HIV Law and Policy,
Mhm.
and I have the honor to be on their panel
Mhm.
in order to work with HIV and aging.
Mhm.
And I take a whole different spin
Wow.
on that. What I offered is that when I oftentimes when we talk about any kind of aging
Mhm.
program, my first mind goes to 65 and up.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
What I realize is human beings are aging every day.
Yeah.
So as soon as someone gets a HIV diagnosis, and they are aging with HIV,
Mhm.
Why are you calling me old?
I did kind of. Well, your
You did,
birthday is
right?
coming up
Mhm.
though.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so when we come under that context,
Yeah.
Mhm.
how do we work with people to be in a situation when where I'm 60?
Mm.
The person who's 25 currently that's living with HIV. When he's 60, I want him to have a clear plan to meet every one of his dreams. Because in 88, I didn't think I was going to have those dreams.
Yeah.
Of
You know,
course.
I guarantee at an 88 at age 24,
Mhm.
60 wasn't even
I thought. Yeah.
at all.
I love getting older.
Me,
I've enjoyed
definitely.
I've enjoyed getting older, and I think part of
Yeah.
that is because when I was so young, I
Yeah.
thought I thought if I lived to be 26,
Right.
I would be like freaking old.
I remember.
And I'm going to be 46. That's
yeah,
crazy.
it was October of '88, and I remember I didn't share that how I found out my HIV status. I was after college, I was going to join the military, and then you have the testing,
right.
and they call me back in for the results, like an extra trip, and I'm thinking, and forgive me for that, but I'm thinking, man, did I get a dirty way or something?
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking in my
Right.
head, I'm wondering what's going on,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of going through the possibilities. And then they told me that I was tested positive for HIV. And I truly, sadly, didn't even know what HIV really was. I kind of sort of did, but not really.
Yeah.
And so inside, I was like doing a little happy dance. I'm like, "Ooh, all I got to do is get a shot or something, and I'm out of here."
Right.
Mhm.
And that's when the nurse said, "No, that's the virus that causes AIDS." Well, AIDS I had heard about,
Wow.
and all the
HIV,
things that then all the things that come with that, and that's when my life changed to some degree. I mean, I left and went and told my mom and dad, and I'm real slick, so I told my sister first because if I told her, she's going to call mom and dad,
Mhm.
and then the ripple effect. By the time I get there, all the dirty work has been done.
Yeah.
You know, but then I said relative my goodbyes, and the hardest thing I think that maybe you can relate to this. The hardest thing was it wasn't that I didn't want to talk about it or give answers. At that time, I just didn't have an answer to give.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just trying to breathe in and
Processing
out.
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you can only take so much
Yeah.
in at one time. Like it's a process.
Right. So events like this, what Sero does with you inviting me on the podcast, all those things does, it opens it up so we start having those conversations.
Mhm.
So I guarantee we all have the same fears. And all I'm asking for so when it gets to the point where it's a legislative conversation,
Mhm.
I'm just asking us to just look at it.
Yeah.
Because I understand the fears, believe me. We understand the fears. I've lived the fears. But as science and technology has changed, I've changed. The way we should view HIV's changed. And I don't know, maybe this law is obsolete. You know, maybe it's outdated and maybe they're unnecessary now.
Yeah.
Maybe take a step back and kind of look at those type of things and see it in those contexts.
No, maybe they are.
Right.
Like there's no sense.
Right.
There's no logical sense that sort of law should be on the books. We
Especially-
know better.
Right.
Yeah. In
Right.
comparison to the 80s, like
Right.
Yeah.
that's these laws that were established so long ago when it was effectively like a death sentence.
Right.
And I think back in those days, it was a precaution that they were trying to just prevent it, all of these things.
Mhm.
Let's stop
it's like-
everything for now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it is not like that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it
We
is.
know better.
Yeah, we know so many people that
Right.
are living beautiful,
Living and
healthy,
thriving.
yes,
Right.
with HIV.
Right.
And they're not transmitting the virus.
Exactly.
Like that's the other
Exactly.
aspect. The people who are transmitting the virus are people who don't know their status.
Right.
Like
Right.
that's
so
the key.
frustrating.
Like
Yeah.
once people know their status,
I mean,
it's very
with
rare
these
that they
medications, you're
transmit it.
telling me about, like, just like, bam, I'm talking within a month, their viral loads down, I mean, the whole thing, and then you start to live and thrive again. And
You can see somebody literally
Yeah.
go from being sick and in a hospital on their deathbed,
you bet.
they go on HIV
You
meds,
bet.
and within a month, they're like a brand new person.
Yeah, this is such a, I mean, I'm just listening to both of you. This is such a great opportunity to kind of, these are the conversation we're talking about. So I
Mhm.
really appreciate just have the opportunity to have this conversation.
Yeah.
But it kind of reminds me when you were talking about Alpha and how we met. To me, that it's really, I can use the word spiritual, can I?
Yeah, for sure.
It is really the whole part is really spiritual for me in this context in
Yeah.
reference to you.
It makes sense.
That
Yeah.
I wasn't quite as young as you, but
Right.
you were doing your thing
yeah.
with Alpha, and I was just a volunteer. And I remember taking my son down there,
Mhm.
and he would ask great questions, and people that I were dating would come in and
Mhm.
spend a Saturday. We'd pass out condoms and those type of things.
Mhm.
But then for 15 years, I was incarcerated,
Yeah.
and so when I got out, I'd heard that you moved away, all
Mhm.
those type of things. And what really resonates with me is that we both had our I don't want to use can I use the word
You
transition?
can totally, yeah.
Transition's okay.
You can use the word transition.
Okay.
Yes.
We both had our transition. I
Yeah.
through the prison system over 15 years had an opportunity to really define who I am.
Mhm.
And again, it's not overnight.
Right.
I'm
of
saying
course.
15 years.
Yeah.
And moving forward is the same thing. It's a process.
Mhm.
And then it warms my heart because you went through the same transition.
Yeah.
Of being the person who you want to be.
Yeah.
I was being the person I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And now we get a chance to hang out. That to me, that's very, very moving.
Yeah. I mean,
love that.
I
Yeah.
definitely feel that way too. It's like at the end of the day, I do feel like there's some sort of like thing bigger than me that kind of brought us together in each other's life at this moment, because
Sure.
I think we're both going through a lot of new experiences and we're getting to do that together.
Mhm.
And they were things that I was shying away from
Yeah.
and I was scared of.
Mhm.
And like with you coming back into my life, it's like I'm less scared of the world and I'm less scared of like just being who I am. And it's been so great. And I feel like there's just been this mutual connection that's been
Yeah.
like, it is like something you can't set up,
Right.
but it's also like undeniable
Right.
because And it's so wild to me because I mean, there was a whole bunch of us at your court date. We all were standing outside in the hallway. There was probably a dozen or more of us.
Sure.
We were going in there to try to speak on your behalf in the court. The judge said no. The judge lectured us and told us we were horrible people for supporting it and sent us on our way.
You bet.
And that was the last time I saw and I wouldn't even say we were close at that time. Like I knew who you were. And then I was like, okay, this man goes away for 30 years. And there was like, it felt so like there was nothing we could do.
Yeah.
And then I did start to see you though, because I moved to Chicago and I moved to San Francisco and I was doing work, and then I'd see you on the cover of magazines and that you were speaking at this conference while you were in prison and doing all this stuff. And I was like, yes, like that's the guy that I always knew, you know what I mean? And the spirituality, the way that you were healing, like I still cannot believe that you can, like, I don't know if I could ever forgive.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm ever going to forgive what you went through.
I think that there's a level of, and I'm glad this is also as a spiritual tone to the podcast, which makes your podcast so powerful. And spirituality is a word that's oftentimes misused because spirituality is so personal. And to me, holding on to resentment is like chain smoking hate, you know, or better yet, it's like I'm gonna torture myself and expect you to feel the pain of it. You know, and I think that at some level there's a level of acceptance for sure. A lot of that comes with education. A lot of that comes with empathy. All that stuff is bottled up. And how do we move? I don't like the term move on. How do you move through? Because it is a process.
Right.
You know,
I think that's the key, is to move through it. Because I know so much in my life I either avoided or I pretended it wasn't happening, or I like sidestepped. And like the truth is like I have to go through it because it's still hanging out there.
I remember a couple times when we went to dinner or something, like the first couple of times. I think I'm pretty sure it was downtown. I don't know if I can say the restaurant that it was at. I mean, that's you know, not if you have that kind of sponsorship.
Right. Not yet.
I truly I do my best to see every person as who they are, who they want to present to be, but who that person. And so, and it took me a second because I see you as Bonnie, period. No offense or buts. And so I remember when we went to such and such a restaurant, you were a little
I was very uncomfortable.
And and excuse my language. I'm like, get in the car, bring your ass on, let's go. What's the problem? You know, and not that I sometimes people say I can be a little bit immature, you know, but I don't know if that's true.
I've never heard anyone say that.
With the as I eye poke you. But yeah, it's like I wish somebody would say something, because folks, we just have to like start allowing people to be people. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This way that you want to be accepted. And I think that one of the biggest things I picked up inside a correctional facility is a pure understanding of what empathy is. Again, empathy is about feeling with you, not feeling for you, not feeling against you. It's just happening. But to be empathic, you have to really want to be vulnerable.
Right.
That's the difference. I don't see us as a society, sometimes certain levels of community, that's willing to be vulnerable enough to put your hand out there and say, how can I help you?
Right.
You know, we're quick to tear people down. We're quick to name call, but we're not to the point of reaching out and saying, what can I do for you? Or I don't even understand what you're going through, you know, but I'm willing to listen.
I think there's that, but I think a lot of people are just hurting and struggling. And I think, I think
feel it, huh?
And it's really hard to get past your own struggle to meet somebody in theirs.
You bet.
And especially if sometimes I think there's so much of the world will tell us, and I think that's why Trump and the politics are so powerful right now, is because there are so many people who are struggling, and what politics is doing is it's their fault.
Exactly.
They're the ones doing this to me. And so I think that's the part that's hard, is because we all want to be able to blame someone for what's happening to us. Like we can even be blaming them, right? But it's more than that.
That's what's so powerful that you're saying that. And that again is one of the reasons behind my vision of HIV is not a crime awareness day for Idaho. Because that's what criminalized HIV is saying is their fault.
Right.
It's that person. Right. Because it's interesting when you brought up my case, all the stuff that was going on, all the drama, the one thing they didn't talk about one time was HIV.
Oh my God. I mean, that totally makes sense. They're trying to get rid of all of these resources, and I think they're using HIV as kind of this smokescreen to hide like their racism, their bigotry, their hatred. And I think that what happened to you is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
You know, like if it was truly about what they said it was about, they would have been mentioning that. They would have been focusing on that.
On the illness itself. But I think that so with Sero Project, I had the opportunity to go to different parts of the country, down south primarily. And this year, I really want to focus on our community.
Yeah.
What can we do different? We didn't have a HIV Crime Awareness Day. Me and Kevin were in town, but we really didn't do a lot. And it's important that I want to include everyone to have that conversation, like you're saying. You know, to get the word out there of what we can do, what's true, what's not true, what's obsolete, what's not obsolete, you know, what's outdated, what's not outdated, and to have those kind of conversations with folks to move through it, to move past this where we're stuck, you know, and to see people for who they are. It's okay if you're scared. I was scared. Yeah. You know, I get it, 100%. But how do we move through that? I made a choice. I don't want to live my life constantly in fear. And I would argue most people are the same way.
Right.
You know, most people, we have grandkids, kids, brother, sister, the litany of those relations that we have. We don't want harm to come to them.
Right. No.
You know, but making someone the boogeyman, you know, is not the answer.
And we see that all the time too, even with like you have conservative people or people who are like on the other side, and then they have a trans family member or something, and then they're like kind of talking to us, and they're like, "How do I do this?" Or this isn't right. And they really start to question the sorts of things. One of the things that I'm hearing a lot, and which is still really remarkable, is like you've gained so much wisdom. You kind of have a gratitude and a perspective from your experience that I think really lends to a lot. And I think it really reminds me of what HIV in a lot of ways has always done. It's always illuminated and put a light on the problems of the world in a lot of ways. You know, I mean, it initially impacted homosexuals in a time when things were really, really bad, and like heroin addicts and Haitians even at the time, you know, all the H's, right? You know, and then through that process, we learned that it was a sexually transmitted disease. And then we started combating stigma around sex and being queer and all these sorts of things. And then we actually have gotten better about, we found treatments for people with cancer and other diseases because we were studying HIV, you know? COVID. Exactly. And we've learned that we actually provide better healthcare when we treat the whole person instead of just the disease. And we're learning about how housing and all these sorts of things are so much, like we're learning from HIV and how HIV impacting people. And I think another one of those areas that we really have not spent the time on that might be one of the final lessons. I'm sure there's more, but maybe the next lesson is around the criminal system in general. And I think HIV is illuminating, and even what's going on with trans people right now is really illuminating a bigger problem with the criminal system.
I'm glad you brought that up. So when you talk about the correctional setting, and there's individuals who are currently incarcerated that are trans, and how do we treat folks? You know, how do we give them their privacy? How do we help them through whatever they're going through, whatever the issues that are going through? But one thing we cannot do is put people in a situation where they're going to be abused. It doesn't matter if you're inside a prison or not. It doesn't matter what the circumstances that were where the person's now incarcerated. You still got people with dignity. 100%. And I think for the most part, you know, I think that we're moving that direction. And I think that what you're doing as far as your podcast and all the other things you do with the community are huge. That's enjoying getting to know you a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Because at first I was like, I don't know.
You know about that guy.
All that was going on. And, you know, that you kind of gave me a little side eye, and that's fine.
I did?
No, he thought you were great from the get.
But I think that's fine. That's fine.
I always loved you.
That's how we know people as individuals. You know what I mean? And so why, on our differences, why as a community are we allowing that to be the separator? You know, I think why is it that there's so many things that are where we're attacking the trans community now? My question is for what? And I promise we wouldn't go into it too much.
No, that's okay.
Over that time? I don't care. You know, I remember growing up where, you know, I grew up here in Boise, and so we'd be down by the river. You know, you go behind the tree and take care of your business, go about your day. And that was if you're a girl, if you're a boy, it didn't matter. But we're not going to run all the way home. You know, and miss something and come back. So now, that's where, and I'm not. When I say I'm over it, I don't mean as in a dismissive way.
Yeah.
I'm just like, come on, we're adults.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
I can imagine it has to be frustrating, and the little tiny arguments. And I admire that you're steady going to the courthouse, to the Capitol building, and trying to mark your stand. It's like, no, this is not enough.
Yeah.
And I think that when it comes to my advocacy, would have been easy or comfortable just to get on the plane and go down south and do all this stuff. Sure. Yeah. But this is where I live.
I think that's why
this is where I grew up. Somewhere along the line, I have to put my flag down and say, and it doesn't mean that we're going to win every battle. No, I don't. I don't have that expectation. Yeah. But the expectation I do have for myself is I'm going to say something.
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. And you're doing a great job of getting the word out.
Thank you. It's very disheartening. Going to, and I'm sure all of these things start at the top and it kind of trickles down, like a lot of the disinformation that we're seeing, that you're seeing, like in our respective fields is coming from these discriminatory laws.
Okay, I follow you.
And so I think there are people that, only get their news from certain outlets that are going to see that we aren't allowed in certain bathrooms, or that they are going to try and block PrEP because it's harmful and it's going to criminals, or however they fucking phrase it. Right. And then that's the information that these people are going to have. So when they're interacting with one of us, they're going to have that on their mind instead of anything science-based.
Sure.
And I think that's going to be harmful. So when we have these things going to, like, these bills, and we go and we protest them knowing that they're going to get passed anyway, it's discouraging knowing that we're fighting so hard for these things that truly matter and that affect so many lives, and yet the people that are pulling the strings don't care. And that, I think, is what we need to figure out how to change. There's like this systemic hatred.
They're too far removed from our humanity, and I think that goes right back
to a powerful phrase.
What you were talking about. Well, that's just the truth of it. And like that, you were talking about the remedy to that. They need to see our humanity, and the way that's going to happen is like this, not recorded for people to listen to and watch to. That might inspire people to have conversations. You bet. But it really takes us being able to like let down our walls and just have a conversation about what's on our mind, and I think even our conversation today, we can focus around HIV is not a crime, but we also were able just to talk about a lot of different things that just kind of come up when you're in conversation with people. Experience. Exactly.
I think that you're right on time, right on point with that. Is how do we recognize or see the humanity in other folks? And I had to,
which is so wild to think that we lose sight of that.
It was really odd for me that when we were talking about human dignity and humanity, all those type of things, and what I really realized is that doing a lot of self work, I had to see my own humanity first. I can't. No one's going to see something I don't have for myself. And once I started to grab onto that, and that's why I encourage people to, who are you? What is your self-worth? I mean, it is, because I know sometimes you'll hear phrases like, well, my self-worth isn't dependent on other people. But, okay, I get it. That's not true. It does bother me if I'm in a store and I feel someone's giving me the side eye, or I see someone that read or hear about someone that's mistreating you folks. That matters. But I had to really tweak that a little bit to where, the people that are in my life, darn right, your opinion of me matters. Darn right, my self-worth depends on how you see me. But more importantly, I had to really fine tune how I see myself.
Right.
So, that's what I think is. And when we were talking briefly about MLK, and I'm really paraphrasing a lot, but that's one of the first things that he taught was that the first of the civil rights, one of the first things they did is they self-reflected. Where are we at? And then go external. So that door swings both ways. I have an expectation that people are going to treat people with dignity on the other side of the door. Treat yourself a little bit better. What's that look like? I like chocolate. I like fried food. Because there's so many different ways that I express my humanity, who Kerry is. Those little tiny things matter. And I imagine that as trans individuals, that is a challenge sometimes to determine who am I, what's my self-worth, all those type of things are part of the gig. And we need people that are going to support each other through that process.
And that's the challenge.
I imagine so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like all of my head's just like spinning with all kinds of things. I was like, I wonder if one of the most human things that we can do as humans is not see the humanity in one another.
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
Not see the
One of the
humanity.
most
Human things to do is to not see the humanity, because
yeah.
I can fall short of it. I remember like
You bet.
sometimes with my roommate, like
Yeah.
all of a sudden my roommate is not an amazing girl that I love living with, but she's like left a mess, or that, you know what I mean? And like all of a sudden her humanity is gone.
Right.
And I mean, and that seems like very silly and benign, but like that's how it happens in bigger, more drastic, more
I can see that.
harmful ways.
Yeah,
you
you
know what
bet.
I mean? And
You
I'm like,
bet.
and that's a very human
Mhm.
thing that I don't love about myself,
Sure.
but it's something that is very natural, I guess. And I really have to be intentional. I think that's where spirituality comes into me.
Yeah. You
Is
bet.
being really intentional and seeing the humanity
Mhm.
of myself and others, so that I know that it's not just about me,
Right.
that there are other people impacted by
Right.
me and how the way that I am and how I show up in the world, you know?
One of our partner organizations, because you remind me of a call that I was on a couple of weeks ago that was basically saying the same thing, as one of our national partner organizations is Positively Trans. And I've learned I've learned so much from that organization, and not on the big trainings where you're sitting there and you got the PowerPoint going on and all that kind of stuff. No, just being able to, on the sidebar conversations, have with folks, and the importance of working together in all situations. So Sero Project, we really strongly are partner with in any way that we can. I'm learning this community that's just reciprocated. You know, the trans population here, we really want to work together, and that's how it starts. And we pull someone else in, and you know, maybe if we start, what was those things we had? Can I say the nut and butt cakes? Can I say that?
Yeah, nut and butt cakes.
Yeah.
Or nut the butt cakes. Yeah.
Yeah, those were cute.
Those are incredible. That's a free plug.
And they're not sponsors either.
I know they're not sponsors, but you know, you want to get Kerry to show up. Yeah, serve some of them.
Some nut and
Those
butt.
were really good.
Those were
I had
cakes.
one. I'm not supposed to eat those, but I had
Someone
one.
said I eat too many, but I ain't gonna say.
I did not say that. I just meant other people wanted some.
As I was home.
And they were little. Yeah.
Yeah, they were teeny, and we are kind of running on time, but I would love it if, like, what for folks who, I think for a lot of folks this might not be something they've thought too much about.
Sure.
And they might be like, I want to do something.
Exactly.
What is your message to those folks?
I was waiting for that. So
at the end of the day, what would you like? Yes.
Right now we're just relationship building. That's all we're doing. And so Friday again at the Capitol from 10 to 2. We'll be there for HIV is Not a Crime Awareness Day. We'll be on the fourth floor rotunda. There'll be some. And
so folks are welcome to come.
It's wide open. Please come by, introduce yourself. I'd love that opportunity to chop it up and, you know, serve you some lasagna
and Preston and myself will be there too, right?
Excellent. Excellent. And that's the intent behind this. Is we're not there. This is to legislators out there. This is who their staffers. We're not there to try to, you know, twist your arm. And the last time I went to AIDS Watch, when I walked in one of the meetings, you know, I'm like, look, I'm not here to ask for money.
Yeah.
You know, really, I'm not. I don't want your checkbook. What I do want you to do, I want your ear. I want you to listen.
Yeah.
You know, and I want your influence. That's the same thing we're talking about here. So on Friday, just come down and hang out. I'd love to hear your viewpoint, even if you don't agree with what we're saying. That's fine. I'm open to having that dialogue, and so we can start moving things a little bit forward. What does forward mean to me? Forward means to me that we're going to eliminate the statute. You know, take a look at it, and not simply because I was incarcerated, not because that I'm worried about by as an individual. I want us to be a strong society. I want us to be a strong community. And when we're looking at things that are obsolete, outdated, you know, and unnecessary, let's start having those conversations, because in the long run, the money that we're spending over here with incarceration, what it takes to prosecute this, maybe let's for some of that healthcare, that funding. Absolutely. Maybe this will go to better mental health care inside the facility. Maybe instead of sending up when people get caught up, there's more resources available, or the skills to develop relationship. We can start having more deeper conversations. You know, so my ask is just come down to the Capitol. You know, we'll get opportunity. You'll meet a very good friend of mine, also co-worker, Kevin Lish from Pocatello, Idaho. Had to get the plug in for him. Wonderful human being and very, very passionate. And so just start making some new connections and we'll move forward. So this time today, I mean, just top it off. I appreciate the opportunity to come down, spend a little bit of time with you.
Oh, less than an hour. I think we're good. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
thank
that's
you so much.
perfect.
And I'm sure,
Thank you.
I'm the part of me, there were so many other topics I think that came up
Oh yeah,
in our conversation today.
Sure.
So who knows?
Me
Maybe
too.
we'll
we'll definitely
maybe we'll
have
have to
you
ask
back.
you back.
Yeah,
If
we
you have any-
definitely will.
And if you have any questions, you can go to seroproject.com. I'm personally don't have social media.
Mhm.
Y'all scare me.
No,
You know,
but we
I'm
can.
not quite ready for social media
Mhm.
yet.
That's fair.
So you can always contact me through seroproject.com.
Mhm. And we'll put that in the show notes if you want to try
Yeah.
to reach out to Kerry.
You bet. And also the Idaho Coalition for HIV Health and Safety. I was practicing that in the mirror.
Mhm.
But
It's a
yeah,
mouthful.
you can reach out to us, and if you want the details of what's going on, all HIV criminalization related.
Perfect.
I believe that
So-
I believe that you care about HIV criminalization or ending HIV criminalization.
Absolutely.
You folks just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
You do care.
Oh yeah.
we
yeah.
know. We do care.
We care.
We care.
Yeah. We care.
I bet.
Yes,
I bet.
and
And
many
I
of the
appreciate-
folks
appreciate
listening to
I
us
appreciate
too.
your support and
Yeah.
look forward to connecting with folks down the road.
Awesome. Well, thank
Absolutely.
you so much, Kerry. And thanks everyone for joining us this
Have a good
week.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think next week we're going to focus on some, I don't know, comedy, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, because we have a comedy show
Mhm.
next Thursday night if you happen
Mhm.
to be in the Boise area. Or
Mhm.
actually, it's part of a national tour. It's called the Here to Pee. So
Mhm.
maybe you can find the Here to Pee
Called
tour, Here to Pee.
Here to be.
Here to Pee tour. It's put on by a trans comedian, Ren Q,
Yeah. Ren Q.
on Instagram, and they're doing all 50 states.
Yeah.
So,
It's gonna be exciting.
yeah, we're excited to get to like host it or open the show, or
Yeah.
we're
It'll
still
be
figuring
good.
out what to call it. But yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
We'll
a
be there.
fundraiser, and it's a fundraiser for the community center, which is a
Mhm.
local community center here that supports the LGBTQ community. So,
Yeah. It'll be a good time.
all right, we just got a plug in there, like
Yeah.
it was like
That was pretty good.
boom, right?
Practicing that?
It
We're
was
getting
not
there.
even intentional. It was just
perfect.
kind of like, all right,
Nice.
all right. Well, take care, everyone.